Hey dudes, and welcome back to the Bants. As always, I am your host, the Bants, and here we are once again into the middle of our weekends. I hope you all are enjoying your Saturday, and once again, to hopefully go along with it, it is time for our second and final What's Happening in Fashion for the week, so let's just get right into it. And first up, of course, we have our headline for the day, and in our headline for the day, with brand Moncler opening up 2 brand new Moncler Genius stores in both New York and Tokyo, I thought it would be just a good as time as ever to kind of take a look back on the first year of Moncler's Genius line. And for those of you out there who I know are probably complaining about this, I apologize, I have talked about this collection a lot. And even though, yes, I still do plan to talk about each individual collection in the future, although I'll explain what that means a little bit more further in the headline. As far as talking about all these collections as a whole, this will probably be the last time, so bear with me. So let's start off with a quick refresher. Sometime late last year, Moncler announced that they were going to be ending their Moncler Gomme Blue line, which was their long-standing collaboration with Thom Browne. But to keep the idea of collaboration alive within the brand, Moncler in turn announced their Moncler Genius lines, which was a collaboration once again, but instead of just with one designer, such as Thom Browne, it was with 8 designers spanning all over the fashion world. Everything from the more low-end yet still widely popular graphics and designs from Hiroshi Fujiwara, all the way up to the highest levels of artistry from designers like Craig Green. But this now all leads up to a few weeks ago when they announced the opening of these 2 brick and mortars, and let's just talk about them first. These 2 locations are acting more as exhibits really to these 8 collaborations. Although there is some stuff for sale, the Moncler stores also have their Moncler Genius yellow line available, which is pretty much the Genius's version of an in-house line. And I do have to say, if you happen to live in either of these 2 locations or have access to either of these 2 locations anytime in the near future, I highly recommend going to check these out. All 8 of these collections plus their in-house collection have all been super interesting, and I've even reviewed pretty much all of it up until this point, although it's still technically releasing as all 8 collections still aren't out on the market yet, although at the time of this video the Grenoble collection just launched, so it's slowly making its way there. But now as the year quickly comes to an end, and now as we've seen the launch of I believe 5 Moncler Genius collections, those being Fragments, Noir, 1952, Grenoble, which I just mentioned, and Craig Green, let's talk about how well it's all gone. Well, to sum it up very quickly, for Moncler, it has just gone absolutely fantastic. There has really just been an amazing amount of hype around each and every one of these collections. And really, the reason why they've been so successful all really boils down to 2 major factors. Those 2 factors being the collaborations themselves, as well as their launch cycles. Starting off with the collaborations here, Moncler just did an absolutely amazing job at choosing such a wide variety of designers to really fit every single need and niche they could possibly want. Do you want to get all those streetwear enthusiasts out there who you know will spread word of mouth and hype like wildfire? Doesn't matter if they're young, old, into popular brands or not. Interested into your Moncler collection? Bring in Fragment and Palm Angels. Then for all the Moncler diehards out there who really don't want to go too far away from the original style, bring in 1952 and Grenoble. They even brought in designers that would appeal to the bougie fashion elite, such as Piccioli and Green, and they really just have a designer for everyone. And do you know what the craziest thing about all of this is so far? Each and every collection that is released as of now has sold out. Yes, even the Craig Green collection, which I will always continue to make fun of everybody and anybody who wears it. And no, wearing it ironically does not make it any more fashionable. But another one of the reasons why every single one of these collections has been selling out leads us to our second major factor, which is once again the release schedule. Unlike really about 99% of the brands out there, instead of releasing the Moncler Genius lines on a normal seasonal schedule, Moncler decided to release pieces every single month instead. And not only does this mean that because there will be more releases, there will also be smaller releases, meaning that more people will have to claw and fight each other for them, but it also means that instead of having just a one and done drop for one season and then having the hype slowly trickle away, instead you can have multiple drops of the same collection, causing the hype to remain more relevant, and obviously meaning that there will be once again more eyes on your brand. Now, to some of the younger viewers out there, these two ideas, the idea of collaborations and excessive release cycles, might not seem that odd to you. And the reason that is because these two ideas are both associated with one major style of fashion, and that is, of course, streetwear. Streetwear has been employing these elements for really years and decades even, but these ideas are really relatively new to anything on a much higher fashion level. Sure, luxury brands and fashion houses have done collaborations in the past, albeit very few and far between, but really the major tipping point, as much as I personally hate to admit it myself, was of course the Supreme Louis Vuitton collaboration, which really opened up the floodgates for this ideology here. And although other designers out there have already started to state that they will be implementing similar ideas and release schedules, the two of which that come to mind most are Riccardo Tizzi, obviously now of Burberry, and Eddie Slimane, now obviously of Celine. The fact of the matter is that both of these two men have just recently released their first seasons, and Moncler Genius already has a 9-month head start on them. So seeing as Moncler was really the first to implement these, it was really to a lot of people who didn't know about these two ideologies a gamble. But god fucking damn was it a gamble that paid off. So much so that while Tizzi and Slimane were showing off their first seasons, Moncler was already announcing a second season of all of their Moncler collaborations. Hence why I said I'd still be talking about these individual lines in the future. But now with all that said, I'd love to pass on a couple questions to you guys. Seeing how well this has worked for Moncler Genius, would you like to see more high-end, more luxury fashion houses, or maybe even just somewhere in between, really kind of hop onto these two ideas? Would you really like to see more collaborations out there across the spectrum of fashion? Or would you like to see a bunch of companies, instead of sticking to the seasonal style, kind of release either more often or just when they feel like it, such as what Gosha Rimsky is doing now? Well, whatever your thoughts are, I'd like to hear them because I'd really want to know what you all think about this. Oh, and just one quick last thing too. If you haven't had a chance to see any of the Moncler Genius collections yet, Hypebeast did a very nice kind of expose / overview on them, and I will link that as well in the description down below. But with that all now said, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, artist Happy showed off some of his newest works, and I think these are just super cool. I mean, just the amount of layering involved in these pieces with the amount of different styles mixed in make for some very maximalized and surreal works, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, I definitely look out these. Then Conor Harrington showed off some of his newest paintings, and these are just phenomenal. Whether you're a fan of the political ideologies here or not, and there are some here without, just the amount of vividness of color and brush strokes make for some just really beautiful works of art, no pun intended. And if this style has piqued your interest, I definitely check out the rest of his work. And lastly, Victo Ngais showed off some of her newest works, and these are just incredible. I mean, the amount of detail in each and every one of these pieces, be it either the repetition of ideas or just patterns, or even some of the more pointillism-esque elements, just make some very meticulous and beautiful works. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, definitely check these out as well. Alright, and now moving back into our fashion section for the day. First up, brand Abasi Rosborough showed off their fall-winter 2018 collection, and I am just super impressed here. As somebody who has really been following Abasi Rosborough since pretty much the beginning, I've always been really excited to see what they do next. Evolving into a much more tech style, which they've been doing the last few seasons, albeit not in a boring way, as they are definitely one of the frontrunners out there supporting the more ethical and sustainable tech wear. But in this collection here, we're seeing Abasi Rosborough evolve their ideas once again and moving into another genre, which a lot of other techwear brands have decided to do nowadays, and that is contemporary wear. What we see here is a much more toned down collection overall, with a lot of very similar silhouettes that you'd see in contemporary and often in artisanal fashion as well. That, however, doesn't mean that we're not seeing the inclusion of tech ideas in these pieces. We definitely are. But one thing that Abasi has always done fairly well in their techwear is not making those elements, those designs, the highlight of their pieces. They're supposed to work and kind of flow with the idea or the silhouettes or the motif of whatever style they're working with. And that especially comes off in this collection here. Nothing really feels out of place in any of these pieces. Every single idea is very aesthetically pleasing, and I mean, it's just so interesting to see how far they've come from their first few collections into making some really stellar ideas here. And you know how I said before that Abasi was really leading the charge in that ethical and sustainable ideologies? Well, every single one of these pieces here, handmade in the garment districts in New York. If that isn't a nice cherry on top, I couldn't possibly tell you what is. So as always, another fantastic collection out of Abasi Rosborough, and after seeing this one, I'm more than excited to see what they come up with next. And lastly, and definitely not least, is Japanese brand Swagger is back once again with their fall-winter 2018 collection, and I couldn't possibly be more excited about this. Now, for those of you out there unaware, and don't worry, I'd be highly surprised if anybody out there was even aware of this brand. Swagger was one of those very niche streetwear brands out of Japan that really had its heyday in the late noughts, you know, close to about 10 years ago. They were really well known for kind of the very bright and vibrant looks of that era, plus a lot of all-over prints as well, so you can kind of really compare them to an Apple Bum, if you guys even know what that brand is either. And just like many of those niche Japanese brands which had either fallen off or disappeared over the last couple of years, unfortunately Swagger had kind of fallen victim to the same idea. I mean, I think the last time I saw them do anything stateside was probably either with this Frank's Chop Shop collaboration here, shoutouts to Frank151 and the Chop Shop, or possibly in Stussy's 30th year anniversary collection, which was 8 years ago. Jesus Christ, it has already been 8 years. But now moving on to the collection, what we see here is really a nice mixture of a bunch of different styles. We see not only old streetwear ideas, but new streetwear ideas, plus a lot of urban wear styles mixed in with some athleisure as well too. All of which is done in a very swagger-esque style. We see a lot of really vibrant color pop here, a lot of maximalism as well, plus those all-over prints which they are so synonymous with. And even though personally I'm not a huge fan of a lot of these silhouettes and pieces, for what they're going for, this kind of urban style meets kind of 90s revival style meets kind of a more modern take on streetwear, I think it is actually very good for what it is. But really, more than anything, it is super nice to just see them getting some sort of recognition stateside once again, and all I can really do is just wish them the best for the future, and hopefully we get to see more of them as well. But with all that said, let's finally move on to our articles for the day. And first up, Highsnobiety put out a nice little brief overview on what they consider to be 23 Italian fashion brands you should know about, and they kind of do a little bit of an introduction on each brand here as well, but really they're talking about more of the higher end, more luxury fashion houses, the ones that are super well known, although there are a couple interesting ones here and there. But either way, if you want to know a little bit more about the more popular fashion brands out of Italy, I definitely look at this. Then legendary fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier actually sat down with Hypebeast of all people for a short little interview, kind of talking about some of the history of his work. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about him, definitely worth reading. And lastly, McKinsey did a super, and I mean super in-depth article on whether or not apparel manufacturing would be coming back to the US. And they go over a lot of different kind of conflicts here and ideas and problems and questions, and they have a lot, I mean a lot of data to back it up, kind of going over the pros and the cons and what could cause this or why it would possibly happen. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this and you have a lot of time to spare, I'd definitely give this a read as well. Alright, and with that we finally reached the end of our second and final WHIF for the week. I hope you guys have all enjoyed. And if you're interested in reading the articles I talked about today or seeing some photos from lookbooks I wasn't able to include, as always I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you are new to the channel, then welcome. We do these what's happening in fashion videos twice a week at the beginning and end of the week, plus another occasional video here or there. So if you're interested and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions, comments, concerns, or even just want to talk fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I am always willing to talk fashion. And thank you all once again for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and as always, until next time.